police, and I sure as hell can't talk to anyone here. My name is Alex Harper. I'm 28, and for the last 3 months, I've been working as a biochemist at a private research facility called the Holopulse. If you've heard of it, I'd be surprised. It's not on any public maps, and the people who work here don't talk about it. I'm writing this from my cramped apartment in Espanola, New Mexico. The sun is setting over the Jemez Mountains, painting everything in those fiery orange and purple strokes that people put on postcards. Usually it calms me down. Tonight, it just feels like the sky is bleeding. I need to start from the beginning. I need to get this straight, for my own sanity as much as for yours. Maybe one of you has heard a story like this. Maybe you know something about this place. God, I hope so. My journey here started with debt. A mountain of it, courtesy of a PhD from the University of New Mexico. I was drowning in student loans, working a dead-end adjunct position in Albuquerque, and watching my future shrink into a pinpoint. So when a recruiter contacted me on LinkedIn about a position at a cutting-edge biotech firm with a salary that could change my life, I jumped at it. The job description was vague, something about cellular resonance analysis, but the pay was real, 6 figures, enough to dig myself out of the hole and maybe even start looking for answers about my brother, Ben. Ben was a physicist. 5 years ago, he took a job at a similar black box facility in Nevada. He called me once sounding wrong, tense. He mentioned weird protocols, non-disclosure agreements that were more like threats. 2 weeks later, he was gone. His car was found abandoned on a desert highway. The official story was that he walked into the desert and never came back. I never bought it. These secretive, high-paying labs in the middle of nowhere, they don't just lose people. The recruiter called the lab the Holopulse. The interview process was intense. Multiple rounds over encrypted video calls, psychological evaluations, a background check that felt like a forensic audit of my entire life. The final interview was with the lab director, a woman named Dr. Evelyn Torres. She was sharp, severe, with eyes that seemed to look right through the screen and pin you to the wall. She didn't ask about my research. She asked how well I followed instructions. She asked if I was prone to unnecessary curiosity. Like an idiot, I told her what she wanted to hear. I was a team player, a rule follower. I got the job. The lab is located 30 miles outside of Espanola, down a stretch of US Route 84 that's nothing but sagebrush and dusty mesas. To get there, you have to turn onto an unmarked service road that winds for 10 miles through restricted government land. The whole area still hums with the ghost of the Manhattan Project. Los Alamos, the secret city, is just over the mountains. The locals here have a healthy, ingrained distrust of places like this. They trade stories about them in hushed tones, tales of strange lights in the sky and military convoys in the dead of night. Growing up in New Mexico, you hear these things. You file them away under regional folklore. You never expect to live them. The compound itself is a jarring mix of architecture. A sleek, modern glass and steel main building rises from the desert floor, but it's connected to a series of squat, windowless concrete bunkers that look like Cold War relics. The whole place is surrounded by a 10-foot-high fence topped with razor wire. The only way in or out is through a security gate manned by guards in tactical gear who look like they've seen more combat than your average soldier. The inside is sterile, cold, and loud. The air has a permanent chemical smell, a mix of antiseptic and ozone, and the constant low-frequency hum of the ventilation system is the facility's heartbeat. It's a sound you feel in your teeth. Fluorescent lights flicker overhead, casting long, distorted shadows that dance at the edge of your vision. It's a place that feels fundamentally unwell. My first day, I met the team. There's Dr. Nathan Weiss, a senior scientist with a PhD from MIT and an ego to match. He's the kind of guy who calls you buddy, while simultaneously making it clear he thinks you're an idiot. He's slick, corporate, and treats the whole high-security vibe like a game. Then there's Dr. Torres, even more intimidating in person. She walks the halls like a shark, her presence sucking the air out of a room. She doesn't manage, she commands. And there's Jake Morales. Jake's a lab tech, born and raised in Espanola. He's my age, with a warm smile and an easygoing manner that feels completely out of place here. He was the one who showed me the ropes, how to clock in, how to requisition samples from the locked cabinets, where the good coffee was. He was also the one who showed me the rules. They were in the break room, a depressing little space with a sticky linoleum floor and a vending machine that only stocked off-brand energy drinks. On a large, cracked whiteboard next to the water cooler, someone had written a list in black marker. The handwriting was uneven, shaky in some places, savagely angry in others. "Read this," Jake said, his usual smile gone. "And don't just read it. Memorize it. Don't be a hero, Alex. Don't be Weiss." I walked over and read the list. The rules: do not hum or whistle after 10 p.m. Do not look at the security camera feeds between 3 o'clock and 3:15 am. Do not touch the steel door in the northern corridor. Do not leave personal items in the lab overnight. Do not speak the name of anyone who has left the lab. Do not turn off the observation rooms screen. Do not drink from the lab's water cooler. Do not enter sublevel B3 without a partner. Do not read the handwritten notes and the sample logs. Do not stay in the lab during a power outage. I stared at the board, a slow grin spreading across my face. "Okay, very funny," I said. "Hazing the new guy. I get it." Jake's expression didn't change. "It's not hazing. Come on," I laughed. "Do not hum after 10 p.m.? What's gonna happen? The centrifuges get stage fright. Just don't do it," he said, his voice low and serious. He pointed a finger at Nathan Weiss, who was microwaving something that smelled vaguely of fish across the room. "That asshole thinks it's a joke, too. Or pretends to. But I've seen him late at night. He walks faster. He doesn't look in the dark corners. He knows." I wanted to press him, but Torres walked in right then, and the conversation died. The subject didn't come up again. For the first couple of months, I threw myself into the work. The science was fascinating, even if I didn't understand the larger objective. We were studying cellular response to specific resonant frequencies, charting how vibrations could trigger or suppress biological processes. It was abstract, theoretical, and involved staring into microscopes for 10 hours a day. The pressure was immense. Torres wanted results, quotas had to be met, and the corporate culture was cutthroat. It was the perfect environment to dismiss the weirdness as a product of stress and exhaustion. And there was weirdness. Lights that buzzed and died whenever I walked under them. A persistent cold spot in the northern corridor, right in front of the featureless steel door mentioned in the rules. Sometimes, I'd catch a glimpse of Maria Begay, one of the night shift janitors. She was a Navajo woman, maybe in her 60s, with a face like a roadmap of the desert. She never spoke to me, but I'd find things in the lab after she'd been through. A small bundle of sage left on my desk. A strange pattern drawn in the dust on a windowsill. Once, I saw her sprinkling a line of black powder across the threshold of the main lab. When she saw me, her eyes widened, and she hurried away without a word. I brushed it all off. I was a scientist. I believed in data, in observation, in phenomena that could be quantified and replicated. I didn't believe in bad vibes or haunted hallways. My first mistake happened about a month ago. I was working late, trying to finish a report for Torres. The deadline was the next morning, and I was running on caffeine and pure stubbornness. The lab was empty, or so I thought. The sun had long since set, and the only light came from my desk lamp and the green glow of the equipment displays. The ever-present hum of the building seemed louder in the silence, a physical weight on my shoulders. To keep myself awake, I put on my headphones, but the battery was dead. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the hum. Felt expectant. I needed to fill it. Without thinking, I started humming. It was an old Lynyrd Skynyrd tune, Simple Man, something my dad used to play on his guitar. A little piece of home in this sterile, alien place that I hummed the first few bars. my focus entirely on the spreadsheet in front of me. That's when the sound changed. The low drone of the ventilation system pitched upward, rising into a discordant, metallic shriek. It wasn't a mechanical fault. It was a chorus. It sounded like 1,000 voices screaming in unison from a great distance. A sound of pure agony that vibrated through the floor and up my chair. I ripped the dead headphones from my ears, my heart hammering against my ribs. The sound stopped instantly. Silence rushed back in, heavy and suffocating. What the hell was that? I stood up, my legs shaky. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding small and thin. "Anyone there?" No answer. I told myself it was the HVAC system. Old building, weird acoustics. The stress was getting to me, making me auditory hallucinate. I sat back down, my hand trembling as I reached for my mouse. And then I saw the shadows. In the far corner of the lab, where the light from my lamp didn't reach, the darkness was thicker. It wasn't just the absence of light. It had depth, texture. As I watched, a sliver of it pulsed, swelling outward like a drop of ink in water. It formed a vague, almost human shape, then another and another. They swayed in place, a silent, macabre dance troupe. They were mimicking my tune, keeping time with the song that was still playing in my head. I couldn't breathe. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my bag, shoved my laptop inside, and practically ran out of the lab. I didn't stop running until I was in my car, fumbling with the keys, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I peeled out of the parking lot, the gravel crunching under my tires. I didn't look back. The next day, I expected someone to say something, for Torres to pull me aside, for Jake to give me an "I told you so" look. Nothing. The lab was exactly as it had been. The shadows were just shadows. The hum was just a hum. I started to doubt myself. Had I imagined it? A waking nightmare brought on by too much coffee and not enough sleep? It was the most logical explanation. The only one my scientific mind would accept. I convinced myself that's all it was. I doubled down on my work, avoided staying late, and gave the dark corners of the lab a wide berth. I almost managed to forget it. Almost. My second mistake was 2 weeks ago. It was stupider, more careless. Another late night, another deadline. I was exhausted, my brain fried from staring at data points. I packed up my things around 11 p.m., did a mental checklist, and headed for the door. I was halfway to my car before I realized my phone wasn't in my pocket. I swore under my breath. I could just leave it. It wasn't the end of the world. But then I thought about the long, silent drive home. I thought about the possibility of my car breaking down on that desolate service road. I needed it. I trudged back inside, swiped my keycard, and went back to my desk. The phone was right there, lying next to my keyboard. I grabbed it, turned to leave, and froze. Rule number 4. Do not leave personal items in the lab overnight. My blood turned to ice. It was just a phone, a piece of plastic and metal. It wasn't humming. It wasn't making a sound. What harm could it do? Still, a cold dread washed over me. I'd been so careful. But I was tired, and I'd already broken one rule and convinced myself it was nothing. What were the odds? I decided to risk it. I was too tired to go back. I'd grab it first thing in the morning. I had a hard time sleeping that night. I kept thinking about the screaming hum and the dancing shadows. I dreamt I was back in the lab, but it was pitch black, and something was whispering my name from just over my shoulder. When I got to the lab the next morning, I went straight to my desk, and I stopped dead on the sterile white surface of my workspace. My personal items, the ones I kept in my desk drawer, had been arranged. My favorite pen, a spare set of keys, a tube of chapstick, a few loose paper clips. They were laid out in a perfect, tight spiral. In the exact center of the spiral was my phone. Screen up. I stared at it, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. Who would do this? Weiss, as a prank? It seemed too elaborate for him. Maria? Why? My hand shook as I reached for the phone. It was cold to the touch, colder than it should have been. I picked it up. The screen was dark. I pressed the power button, and it flickered to life. The battery was at 100%, which was strange. I was sure it had been at 40% when I left. And then I saw it. The audio recorder app was open. A new file had been created at 3:14 a.m. The file name was just one word. Alex. A wave of nausea hit me. 3:14 a.m. The time from the second rule. Do not look at the security camera feeds between 3 o'clock and 3:15 a.m. Something happens during that window. Something had happened here. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I looked around. The lab was starting to fill up with the morning shift. People were chatting, getting coffee. Everything was normal. Too normal. I felt like I was in a different reality from everyone else. I had to know what was on the recording. I plugged my earbuds in, my fingers fumbling with the jack. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and pressed play. For the first 30 seconds, there was only silence. Not even the hum of the lab. A dead, flat, digital nothing. I was about to turn it off, convinced this was all just an elaborate sick joke, when the voice started. And I swear to God, it was my voice. It wasn't a recording of me speaking. It was my voice, but it was wrong. It was flat, emotionless, hollow, and it was whispering. No one will even know you're gone, it whispered. Just like Ben. Another name on a list. Forgotten. They'll find your car by the side of the road. They'll say you just walked away. But you and I know the truth, don't we, Alex? You didn't walk away. You were erased. I tore the earbuds out, a strangled gasp escaping my lips. I almost dropped the phone. The fear it was describing. It was my deepest, most secret terror. The fear that I would end up like my brother. A ghost. A loose end snipped from the world with no explanation. It wasn't just a fear of dying. It was a fear of being unmade, of my entire existence being wiped clean. I had never spoken those words, never even fully formed that thought. But my own voice was whispering it into my ear from a recording made while I was asleep in my bed miles away. I looked up, my eyes darting around the lab. Weiss was laughing at something on his computer. Jake was calibrating a machine. No one was looking at me. No one seemed to notice the quiet, personal apocalypse that had just detonated in my head. I quickly swept the spiral of items off my desk and into my drawer, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control them. I deleted the audio file, my thumb stabbing at the screen. I wanted it gone. I wanted to pretend it never happened. But you can't unhear something like that. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, things have gotten worse. I hear whispers when no one is around. My own voice, always my own voice, murmuring things from the darkest corners of my mind. I see movement at the edge of my vision, a flicker of a shadow that's gone when I turn to look. The cold spot in the northern corridor seems to have grown, and sometimes I think I can hear a low growl from behind the steel door. I've started to look into the lab's history more seriously. It's hard. Almost everything is classified, but I found a few declassified public records. The facility was built in the 1950s as a private annex to a nearby military base. It was called Project Chimera back then. The stated purpose was bioacoustic research. It was shut down in 1961 after an incident. There are no details about what the incident was. The entire project file is sealed. I've tried to talk to Jake, but he gets cagey. He just shakes his head and tells me to keep mine down. Some doors are best left unopened, he told me yesterday, and he wasn't talking about the one in the northern corridor. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Am I having a psychotic break? Is this what corporate pressure and isolation does to a person? Or is this place real? Is what's happening to me real? That brings me to tonight. That's what pushed me over the edge and made me write this all down. I was in the archives, pulling old sample logs for a new project Torres assigned me. These things are ancient, binders full of yellowed paper, data logged by hand decades ago. I was flipping through a logbook from 1958 from the old Project Chimera. The handwriting was neat, precise, but in the margins, scrawled in a different, frantic hand, were little notes. Most were just numbers, calculations. But then I saw a phrase circled several times. It was written next to a data set showing a massive, off-the-charts energy spike. The note said, "The pulse is awake. Rule number 9. Do not read the handwritten notes in the sample logs. I read it before I could stop myself. The moment my eyes scanned the words, a searing pain shot up my arm, like touching a hot stove. I dropped the binder with a clatter. I looked down at my left forearm, and even in the dim light of the archive room, I could see it. A symbol was burned into my skin. It wasn't red or raw like a normal burn. It was glowing, a faint, sickly green light that seemed to pulse from beneath the surface of my skin. It's a complex shape like a circuit diagram, and a sigil had a baby. As I watched, it pulsed with a faint light, in time with my own heartbeat. That's when I knew. This isn't in my head. This is real. I ran. I left the binder on the floor and I ran. I'm home now. The glowing has faded, but the mark is still there. A pale, ugly scar that wasn't there this morning. It itches. It feels active. I don't know what to do. I can't quit. I can't afford to, and more than that, I'm afraid of what would happen if I tried. People don't just leave the hollow pulse. The phrase from rule number 5, "Do not speak the name of anyone who has left the lab," echoes in my head. What happens to them? Do they end up like my brother? I'm trapped. I'm being haunted by myself, branded by a word I don't understand, in a place that operates on a set of rules from a nightmare. I broke 2 of them by accident. I read a note I shouldn't have. What happens next? I'm posting this because I'm desperate. Has anyone heard of the Hollow Pulse? Or Project Chimera? Has anyone seen a symbol like the one I described? Does anyone know what the pulse is? Please, any information could help. I don't know how much time I have before I break another rule. Or before another one breaks me. It's me again, Alex Harper. Thank you to the handful of people who responded to my last post. Your words of support, the private messages sharing similar strange experiences, they helped. They made me feel less like I was completely losing my mind. But the sliver of comfort I got from your replies was swallowed whole the second I stepped back into the hollow pulse. I'm sorry for the delay in updating. Things have escalated. The fear I felt when I first wrote to you was a spark. Now it's a fire, and it feels like it's burning me from the inside out. The day after I found that glowing symbol on my arm, I almost didn't go back. I sat in my car in the pre-dawn gloom, staring at the turnoff for the service road, and seriously considered just driving east and not stopping until I hit the ocean. But the thought of my student loans was a chain around my ankle. The thought of what happened to my brother, Ben, was another. Quitting felt like surrender. It felt like letting this place win, letting it erase me the same way I suspected erased him. So I put on a long-sleeved shirt to hide the mark on my forearm, which had faded to a pale, silvery scar that itched incessantly, and drove into work, feeling like a soldier heading back to the front line. The lab felt different. Or maybe I was different. The hum of the ventilation seemed to have a voice now, a low, mocking whisper just beneath the audible frequency. The fluorescent lights seemed to flicker in time with my nervous heartbeat. I avoided looking anyone in the eye, convinced they could see the fear crawling all over me. I felt branded. Jake caught up to me by the coffee machine, his brow furrowed with genuine concern. "Hey man, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I almost laughed. Something like that. Rough night. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. The air around us was thick with the smell of burnt coffee and workplace paranoia. "Listen, Alex," he said, his eyes darting around the break room. "I know I told you to keep your head down, but I also know you're not the type. You've got that look." "What look?" "The look David had," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Right before he left, my blood ran cold. David. A name. A former employee. Rule number 5 screamed in my head. Do not speak the name of anyone who has left the lab. Jake hadn't said the name, but he'd put it in the air between us. Who's David? I asked, my own voice a dry rasp. Senior researcher. Smart guy from Caltech. A lot like you, skeptical, always pushing things. He thought the rules were a psychological experiment. He was trying to document the stimulus response of breaking them. Jake shook his head, a sad, distant look in his eyes. He got real weird near the end. Said he felt like he was out of sync with time. Then one Monday his desk was empty. His name was scrubbed from the system. Torres told us he'd resigned to pursue other opportunities. We all knew it was bullshit. The story was so close to Ben's it made my teeth ache. The ambitious scientist, the weird behavior, the sudden disappearance. Did anyone try to contact him? His work phone was disconnected. Personal cell went straight to voicemail, Jake said. It's like he just stopped existing. We all got the message. Don't talk about David. Don't ask about David. He looked me dead in the eye. Don't become David. Before I could respond, the imposing figure of Dr. Torres appeared in the doorway of the break room. Harper. My office. Now. The walk to her office was the longest of my life. Every head in the lab seemed to turn as I passed. Her office was as severe as she was. Minimalist steel desk, a single orchid, and a large tinted window that overlooked the entire lab floor like a disdainful eye. She didn't ask me to sit. Your productivity has dropped by 12% this week, Dr. Harper, she began. Her voice as sharp and cold as shattered glass. Your reports are filed late. You seem distracted. Jumpy. I've just been feeling a little under the weather, I mumbled. This facility requires optimal performance from its staff at all times, she said, her eyes narrowing. There is no room for error, no room for distraction, and absolutely no room for challenging protocol. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. I am aware you've been accessing the historical archives. I am aware you've been fraternizing with junior staff about non-work-related matters. Consider this your only warning. Follow the rules. Do your job, or you will face immediate termination. Do you understand me? The word termination sounded less like I'd be fired and more like I'd be put down. It was a threat cloaked in corporate jargon. She knew. I don't know how, but she knew I was poking around. She was warning me off. Yes, Dr. Torres, I said, my voice tight. I understand. Good. Don't make me have this conversation again. I walked out of her office feeling watched, not just by her, but by the entire building. The paranoia was no longer a quiet hum in the back of my mind. It was a screaming siren, and it was pushing me to do something stupid. Jake's story about David Torres's threat. It all felt like a coordinated effort to scare me away from the truth. But it had the opposite effect. Convinced me that there was a truth to find. I needed proof. I needed something I couldn't explain away as stress or a prank. I needed to see what this place was hiding. And I knew just where to look. Rule number 2. Do not look at the security camera feeds between 3 o'clock and 3:15 a.m. that night. I pretended to leave at my usual time. I drove my car out of the main gate, parked it a half-mile down the service road behind a rocky outcrop, and hiked back, cutting through the desert scrubland, my heart pounding with every snap of a twig. The perimeter fence was a serious obstacle, but I found a spot where seasonal flash floods had eroded the earth beneath it, creating a gap just wide enough to squeeze through. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I crawled under the fence. I was trespassing in a place I was legally employed. I got back into the lab through a little-used maintenance hatch Jake had once pointed out. The building was almost silent, save for the ever-present hum. It was 2:45 a.m. I made my way to the central security station, a small, glass-walled room in the main hub with a bank of monitors displaying dozens of camera feeds from all over the facility. The night guard was nowhere to be seen. Jake said he spends most of his shift sleeping in his car. I sat down in the worn-out office chair, the leather cool against my skin. My hands were sweating. I watched the clock on the monitor tick over. 2:59, 3:00.45 minutes. Nothing happened. The feeds showed empty hallways, silent labs, the dark void of sublevel B3. I started to feel foolish. Maybe this rule at least was a dud. A story to keep people out of the security office. Then, at 3:05 a.m., one of the screens flickered. It was the feed for camera 4B, pointed at a section of the lab I'd never seen before. It looked older, more industrial. Exposed pipes ran along the ceiling, and the walls were bare concrete. A sign on the far wall was just barely legible. Sublevel B3, Sector Gamma, and in the middle of the room, under a single, bare bulb, stood a figure. It was me. I felt the air leave my lungs. It was undeniably me. Same clothes I was wearing right now, same messy brown hair, same nervous way I have of shifting my weight from foot to foot. But I was not in sublevel B3. I was in the security office watching this happen. The me on the screen was talking. Not to the camera, but to something else. Something standing in front of him. It was a figure tall and impossibly thin, its form shifting like television static. It had long, spindly limbs, but its face. There was no face. Just a smooth, blank surface that seemed to drink the light around it. My doppelganger was gesturing wildly, talking with an urgent, desperate energy. I couldn't hear the audio, but I could read the panic in his body language. The faceless thing was perfectly still, just listening. Then, it slowly raised one of its long, static-filled arms and reached out, as if to touch my other self's face. The screen went black. A moment later, all the monitors reset to the live feed. Camera 4B was back to showing an empty, silent room. The clock read 3:16 a.m. The window was over. I sat there, frozen, for what felt like an hour. My brain was a riot of cognitive dissonance. It was impossible. A pre-recorded video? A deepfake? But why? And how did they know what I'd be wearing? The only explanation that made any sense was the one my scientific mind refused to accept. That I had just witnessed something real. Something that happened outside of linear time, in a place I had never been. I stumbled out of the security room just as the first of the morning shift janitors was arriving. It was Maria Begay. She saw my face, my wild, terrified eyes, and for the first time, she spoke to me. Her voice was quiet, raspy, like stones rubbing together. "You saw it, didn't you?" she said, clutching a small leather pouch in her hand. "The man with no face. He walks when the world is sleeping." She pushed the pouch into my hand. It was filled with some kind of dried herbs and what felt like a smooth, flat stone. "You have a hole in your spirit. He can see it. This will help, but it won't save you. This ground is sick. It was made sick a long time ago, before the lab was even here. It remembers." She didn't wait for a reply, just turned and continued on her rounds, leaving me standing there with her cryptic warning and the strange weight of the charm in my hand. The rest of the day was a paranoid nightmare. Every time I saw a flicker of movement in my peripheral vision, I would flinch, expecting to see the tall, static-filled figure standing there. I felt a constant, prickling sensation on the back of my neck, the undeniable feeling of being watched. The encounter with the faceless man solidified my resolve. I had to know more. I needed to understand what had happened to David. My conversation with Jake played over and over in my head. Don't talk about David. Don't ask about David. It was a warning. But to me, it sounded like a dare. I found Jake in the sample storage, cataloging new arrivals. "Hey," I started, trying to sound casual. "I was thinking about what you said earlier. About David." I said the name. "David." Jake froze, his hand hovering over a petri dish. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and anger. "What did you just do?" he hissed. "Are you crazy, Alex? You don't say the names." "Nothing's happening, Jake," I said, my voice bolder than I felt. "See? It's just a name. David. David Chin." That was his last name, right? A low thud from behind me made us both jump on my workstation. 20 feet away, a thick manila folder had appeared. It hadn't been there a second ago. Neither of us had seen it fall. It was just there, lying on the desk as if it had materialized out of thin air. Our .my name, Alex Harper, was typed on the label. My mouth went dry. Jake looked like he was going to be sick. "Don't touch it," he whispered. "Just leave it. Pretend you didn't see it." But I couldn't. I walked toward it as if in a trance. Felt like the entire lab was holding its breath. I reached out a trembling hand and flipped open the cover. It was David Chen's personnel file. Transcripts, psych evals, work history, and photos, page after page of them. His ID badge photo, smiling, bright-eyed. A picture from a corporate team-building event, arm in arm with other scientists. A security still of him entering the lab. But as I flipped through the pages, the photos changed. In the later ones, he looked tired, haggard, the same look I saw in my own mirror every morning. Then the final photo. It was a close-up security shot, dated the day before he disappeared. His face was pale, his mouth open in a silent scream, and his eyes were gone. They weren't closed or shadowed. They were empty, two black, glossy, fathomless voids staring out from the page. It was like someone had taken a hole punch to reality itself. Right where his eyes should have been. I slammed the folder shut, my heart hammering. I stumbled back, knocking over a stool. Jake grabbed my arm, his face ashen. "We need to get rid of it. Burn it." But when we looked back at the desk, the folder was gone. That night I dreamt of him. I was floating in a vast, empty blackness. There was no up or down, no light, no sound. Then a figure drifted into view. It was David. He looked just like he did in that final photograph, his face a mask of terror, his eyes empty sockets that seemed to pull at the darkness around them. He drifted closer, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. He was begging me for something, for help, for release. He reached out a hand, his fingers phasing in and out of existence like bad reception. I tried to scream, but the void stole my breath. I woke up gasping for air, my sheets soaked in sweat. The dream, the folder, the faceless man on the monitor. The cracks in my reality were turning into chasms. The lab itself seemed to be reacting to my fear. The low hum from behind the steel door in the northern corridor was louder now, a constant, guttural growl that I could feel in the soles of my feet. The break room water cooler, the one from rule number 7, had started to act strangely. It would gurgle and bubble at odd intervals, and sometimes a faint, sulfurous steam would rise from the spigot. Everyone ignored it. It was just another piece of broken equipment in a building full of them. I knew the answer had to be in the lab's past. In Project Chimera, I started spending my lunch breaks taking drives, trying to clear my head. I'd end up on old stretches of Route 66, the Mother Road, looking at the decaying motels and kitschy tourist traps, thinking about the layers of history here. The America of road trip nostalgia built right on top of the secret America of Cold War paranoia. The hollow pulse was a monument to the latter. Driven by a new level of desperation, I did something incredibly risky. I'd noticed that Dr. Torres sometimes left her office keys on her desk when she went to the daily senior staff meeting. One afternoon, while she was gone, I slipped into her office. My heart was a jackhammer. I had maybe 10 minutes. I went straight for her filing cabinet. Most of it was locked, but one drawer labeled Site History was open. Inside, I found a thin, heavily redacted file. The cover page read, Project Chimera, Incident Report, October 19th, 1957. Most of the text was blacked out, thick government censorship covering the details. But a few phrases were visible. Uncontrolled resonant frequency. Mass auditory and visual hallucinations among staff. Severe psychological distress. Biological contamination of Sector Gamma. And one final, chilling sentence. Recommend immediate cessation of project and indefinite quarantine of sublevel assets. It was a cover-up. A 50-year-old experiment gone horribly wrong. They weren't studying cellular resonance. They were studying the aftereffects of an accident. We were all just lab rats in a contaminated cage. That had to be it. It was a scientific explanation. Radiation, chemical leaks. It could cause hallucinations, paranoia. It was terrifying, but it was something I could understand. I found more of the handwritten notes from the old logbooks, tucked away in the file. They were more frantic now. One read, "The frequency is not a signal. It's alive. Thinks. The pulse is not what we broadcast. It's what answers." Another said, "It wears our faces. It speaks with our voices. The containment is failing." My scientific explanation was starting to feel thin. This didn't sound like radiation poisoning. That brings me to tonight. I'm back in the lab. I had to come back. I feel drawn to this place now, tethered to it by the mark on my arm and the secrets in its walls. I'm working late, chasing a deadline that feels cosmically unimportant. But my head is pounding. I feel feverish. The scar on my arm is burning, a low, constant heat. I finished the water in my bottle hours ago, and my throat is raw and dry. I'm so thirsty I can barely think straight. And the water cooler in the break room keeps gurgling. I know the rule. Rule number 7. Do not drink from the lab's water cooler. I know what happened when I broke the other rules. But the thirst is a physical, screaming need. My logical mind, the part of me that's still clinging to the idea of a scientific explanation, is telling me it's just water. Old pipes, maybe some mineral buildup. Nothing to be afraid of. It's the dehydration that's making me feel sick, making my head pound. That I'm standing in front of it now, the plastic cup shaking in my hand. The water inside the big blue jug is bubbling, even though the cooling unit isn't running. It looks thick, oily. I'm writing this as a final anchor to sanity. I'm going to drink it. I have to. I'll let you know what happens. If I can. Edit. Oh God. I drank it. The second it touched my tongue, the taste. It wasn't water. It was thick, coppery. Tasted like old blood. I spit it out, gagging, but I swallowed some. I can feel it in my stomach, cold and heavy. That I stumbled into the restroom, my whole body shaking. I looked in the mirror to splash water on my face. My reflection, it was me, but it was wrong. Spreading out from the corners of my mouth, like a network of black rivers under my skin, were veins. Thin, dark lines pulsing with a rhythm that wasn't my own. As I watched, they crept up my cheeks, toward my eyes, and I can feel something in my throat. It's moving. Something is writhing inside me. The faceless man. I can see him. He's not in my peripheral vision anymore. I can see his reflection in the mirror, standing right behind me. He's not doing anything, just watching, waiting. Please help me. Something is wrong inside me. I'm being watched. I think I'm contaminated. This is Alex Harper. I don't know how much time I have. I'm not just being watched anymore. I'm being hunted. The thing that lives in this lab, the thing they call the pulse, it's awake. And I think I'm becoming its new voice, this new vessel. The last time I wrote, I had just drunk from the water cooler. The taste of blood, the black veins in my reflection. That was just the beginning. I managed to stumble back to my desk, my body convulsing, and pretend to work until my shift ended. The drive home was a blur. I remember pulling over on the side of that empty stretch of US 84, the landscape looking like something out of Breaking Bad, stark, desolate, a perfect place to bury secrets. I threw up a thick, black bile on the side of the road that seemed to steam in the cold desert air. The writhing in my throat subsided, but the feeling of being occupied did not. Sleep doesn't offer any escape. My dreams are now exclusively of the void where I saw David Chin. But I'm not just an observer anymore. I'm there with him. He drifts, eyeless and screaming without sound, and I drift with him. We are two ghosts in a machine I don't understand. Sometimes the faceless man is there, too. He stands on the edge of the nothingness, a silent, static sentinel. He's not threatening me in the dream. He's just observing his specimens. The physical toll has been rapid. I'm constantly cold. I've lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. There's a pale, grayish tint to my skin, and the black veins are a permanent feature. I've had to learn how to expertly apply concealer around my mouth and eyes, like a battered spouse hiding bruises, just to look normal enough to get through the security gate. I live in a state of perpetual, low-grade nausea. Jake cornered me a week ago, his face a mask of frantic worry. We were at Joanne's Rancho, the little diner in Espanola that had been my one slice of normalcy. The cheerful rock and roll from the jukebox felt like a broadcast from another planet. "Alex, for God's sake, look at you," he said, pushing my plate of untouched green chili stew toward me. "You're a ghost. You need to get out. Call in sick. Tell them you have a family emergency and just go. Disappear. It's the only way." "I can't, Jake," I said, my voice hoarse. The words tasted like ash. "My brother, Ben. I think what happened to David is what happened to him. If I leave, I'll never know. I'll just be another person who ran. It's better than being another person who got erased," he shot back, his voice dangerously loud. "This place, it feeds on people like you. People who can't let things go." His words hit too close to home. My ambition, my need for answers. This place wasn't just attacking me. It was using my own personality as a weapon against me. Even Nathan Weiss, the smug asshole, seemed to notice. "Rough night, Harper?" he sneered as I passed his desk a few days ago, my hands shaking as I tried to pour a coffee. "You look like you've been mainlining drain cleaner." I ignored him, but later that day I saw something. I saw him in the archives, the same place I'd found the first note about the pulse. He was hunched over one of the old, leather-bound sample logs, his finger tracing the handwritten margins. He thought he was alone. When he heard my footsteps, he slammed the book shut and shoved it back onto the shelf so fast it was almost a blur. He turned, a forced, oily smile on his face, but I saw the panic in his eyes. He was scared. He was breaking rule number 9 just like I had. He was looking for answers, too. Or maybe he was looking for a way out. The lab is getting worse. It's no longer passive-aggressive. It's openly hostile. Equipment activates on its own. One night, a high-speed centrifuge, a machine capable of turning a misplaced object into shrapnel, spun up to max RPMs just as I walked past it, its shriek filling the lab. Cabinet doors slam shut in empty rooms. And the northern corridor, it's become a place of active malice. The low growl from behind the steel door is constant now. Sometimes it sounds like something scraping against the other side. A deep, guttural vibration pulses from it, and I've started to feel a morbid, magnetic pull toward it. A few days ago, the pull became irresistible that I was walking down the hall, and the growling intensified, resonating in my bones. I felt a compulsion that wasn't my own. My feet carried me forward until I was standing right in front of the door. My own hand, feeling like a puppet's, rose up. Rule number 3. Do not touch the steel door in the northern corridor. My fingertips brushed against the cold steel. The effect was instantaneous and violent. A deafening growl erupted from the door, so loud it felt like it was inside my skull. The metal vibrated violently, sending a painful jolt up my arm. The surface, once cold, became searingly hot, and I snatched my hand back with a cry as I looked at my reflection in the polished chrome of a nearby fire extinguisher case. And I screamed. It was my face, but my eyes were gone. In their place were the same black, empty voids I'd seen in David Chen's photograph. My reflection's mouth opened, and a voice came out, but it wasn't from the reflection. It was inside my own head. My own voice, chanting in a language I've never heard. A torrent of guttural, clicking sounds that felt ancient and wronged. I scrambled backwards, falling to the floor, and the vision vanished. My reflection was normal again, but the chanting echoed in my memory. And for the first time, the faceless figure wasn't just in my peripheral vision. I saw him, clear as day, standing at the far end of the corridor, his static form rippling. He just watched me, then turned and faded into the wall. My grip on reality was slipping, and my desperation was making me reckless. My next target was the observation room. It's a small, glass-walled chamber with a single, uncomfortable-looking chair facing a large, blank monitor. The room is always freezing cold. The screen is always on, emitting a faint, gray light. Rule number 6. Do not turn off the observation room screen. Why? What was it showing? Nothing. What was the harm in turning it off? Yesterday I found out. I went into the room. The cold was so intense my breath plumed in front of me. The blank screen seemed to watch me, to judge me. I circled the monitor, my heart pounding. There, on the back, was a single, illuminated power button. With a surge of defiant terror, I pressed it. The screen went dark for a single heartbeat. Then it exploded with light and sound. It was a memory. My 8th birthday party. I saw our old backyard, the cheap streamers, my dad at the grill. But it was all wrong. The children I was playing with had no faces, just smooth, blurred skin like the man who watches me. The birthday cake on the table was covered in black, writhing worms. I saw myself, a small, happy boy, and then I saw my brother, Ben, standing behind me. He looked at the camera, at me, and his eyes were black voids. He mouthed the word run. The scene flickered, replaced by another. My high school graduation. My parents were in the audience, their faces melting like wax. The principal handing me my diploma was the faceless man. The memory twisted, again and again, each one a perversion of something I held dear. Then, the screen went black, and a single line of green, blocky text appeared. Subject: Alex Harper. Status: THOMPROMISEDPROGNOSIS. Termination. Estimated time of cessation: 72 horses. Synthesized voice, the one from the lab's PA system, filled the small room, flat and devoid of emotion. Your body will fail. The host will be assimilated. You will cease in this facility. Your name will be removed. You will be forgotten. It wasn't a prediction. It was a countdown. I stumbled out of the room, the voice's prophecy echoing in my ears. I knew I couldn't figure this out alone. I needed to get into sublevel B3, where I saw my doppelganger on the monitor. But the rule was clear. Do not enter sublevel B3 without a partner. I needed Jake. I cornered him in the parking lot, showing him the raw, red burn on my hand from the door, the black veins I could no longer fully hide. I told him about the countdown. I pleaded with him. They're going to kill me, Jake, or this place is. I have maybe 3 days to figure this out. The answer is down there. You saw the sign on the monitor feed, Sector Gamma. That's the same place the 1957 incident report mentioned. He was terrified, but he saw the desperation in my eyes. He finally, reluctantly, agreed. 1 hour, Alex. We use my card, we go in, we look for anything that can help you, and we get out. And then you are gone. Promise me. I promised. That night, we took the keycard-activated elevator down. The descent felt like we were sinking into the Earth's guts. When the doors opened on B3, the air was different. It was thick, heavy, and smelled of ozone and damp earth. This part of the lab was old, a true Cold War-era bunker. The hum was louder here, a palpable thrum that made my teeth ache. We found Sector Gamma. It was a circular chamber, and in the center was a massive, defunct piece of machinery that looked like a fusion of an MRI and an Iron Maiden. It was covered in thick, black cables that snaked across the floor and into the walls. This was the source. This was where it happened. It was Jake who found the hidden panel in the wall behind a loose concrete block. Inside was a small, lead-lined box, and inside the box was a journal. It was the personal log of Dr. Alistair Finch, the head of Project Chimera. His handwriting started out neat and scientific, but devolved into a frantic, barely legible scrawl that I read the final entries aloud, my voice shaking in the oppressive silence. October 15th, 1957. We've done it. By amplifying the natural resonant frequency of the quartz deposits beneath the facility, we've opened a channel. We thought we were listening to deep space transmissions. We were wrong. We weren't listening out. We were listening in. October 17th, 1957. It's intelligent. It has no biological structure, no mass. It is pure information, a sentient frequency. It learns. It spoke to us today using our own voices, patching together words from our conversations. It calls itself the pulse, because it feels our heartbeats. It says it's lonely. October 19th, 1957. The incident. We tried to amplify the signal. Power surge. It didn't just amplify the channel, it anchored it. The pulse is no longer in the signal. It is in the building. It's in the concrete, the wiring, the water. We have trapped a ghost in a cage of our own making. It is angry. It is screaming. And we are the only ones who can hear it. October 21st, 1957. It's wearing our faces now. I see colleagues walk past who I know are home in bed. It whispers our fears to us in the dark. It is a psychic parasite, and we are its unwilling hosts. We have to shut this place down. We have to bury it. God help us, what have we done? A ghost, a sentient frequency, a psychic parasite. The pulse wasn't a what. It was a who. We weren't studying an anomaly. We were trapped in a cage with a predator. My countdown suddenly made a lot more sense. Termination didn't mean they would kill me. It meant the pulse would finish assimilating me. When we got back upstairs, there was another bad omen. Maria Begay's cleaning cart was abandoned in the middle of a hallway. Her bucket was tipped over, a puddle of murky water spreading across the floor. Taped to the handle of the cart was a small, hand-drawn version of the symbol on my arm. On the back, a hastily scrawled note. It is fully awake. It wears the manager's face now. Cannot hold it back anymore. Run, boy. She was gone. The only person who seemed to understand the spiritual side of this nightmare had disappeared. It wears the manager's face now. The words sent a chill down my spine. Armed with the journal, I did the stupidest thing yet. I confronted Torres. I stormed into her office, threw the journal on her desk, and demanded answers. She didn't even flinch. She looked at the journal, then at me, her face an unreadable mask. You broke protocol. You entered a restricted area. Forget protocol. I yelled, my voice cracking. This thing, the pulse, it's killing me. The screen in the observation room gave me a 72-hour death sentence. What is this place? For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Not fear. Resignation. This facility does not study cellular resonance. Dr. Harper, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. It studies and attempts to contain the anomalous phenomenon you call the pulse. Our working theory is that it is a non-corporeal, infohazardous entity. Every rule in this facility is a containment measure developed through trial and error. Mostly error. So you just let people die? For research, we offer substantial compensation for the risks involved, she said. The corporate line delivered with chilling sincerity. You were warned not to be curious. Before I could argue, she pressed a silent alarm under her desk. 2 guards appeared at the door. Dr. Harper is having a psychotic episode. Escort him off the premises. I was thrown out, my keycard deactivated. But I wasn't done. I knew Nathan Weiss was involved. That night, I used the keylogger I'd managed to install on his computer a week prior. I hacked into his system from my apartment. I found his emails. They were frantic messages to a blacked-out address, a shadow board of directors. Containment integrity is failing. The entity is exhibiting unprecedented levels of mimicry and aggression. Subject Harper has been fully compromised. His psych profile made him a high-risk candidate, but the board insisted. His biomarkers are off the charts. We may have another full-scale breach on our hands. Requesting permission to initiate Protocol Chimera. Protocol Chimera. The name of the original project. Not an experiment. Protocol. Failsafe. I didn't know what it meant, but it sounded final that I had to get back in. To find out what the protocol was, to find some way to fight this. I used the same maintenance hatch as before. I had to know. The 72-hour clock was ticking. And that's when the storm hit. A full-blown New Mexico monsoon, rolling in with terrifying speed. The sky turned black, and the rain came down in sheets. Then, a crack of lightning hit a nearby transformer. The lights flickered and died. The entire lab was plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. The hum stopped. The silence was a physical blow. Rule number 10. Do not stay in the lab during a power outage. The emergency lights, which should have kicked on, remained dark. This wasn't a normal power outage. This was the lab. This was the pulse. I was deep inside, a good 10-minute walk from the nearest exit. I started to run, stumbling through the pitch-black hallways, my only guide the memory of the layout. And then the hands came. They emerged from the walls. Not spectral, ghostly hands. They felt solid, cold, damp, like clay. They grabbed at my clothes, my arms, my legs. I screamed, thrashing, pulling away. I felt fingernails, sharp and ragged, scratch my skin. Then the floor beneath me seemed to give way. A new sound filled the air, the sound of 1,000 whispering voices, all coming from a pit that opened in the floor in front of me. The hands were trying to pull me in, pull me down into the screaming darkness that I don't know how I escaped. I fought, I beat, I kicked. I broke free and ran, blindly, fueled by pure animal terror. I burst through the maintenance hatch and out into the lashing rain, collapsing in the mud, gasping for breath. The lightning flashed, illuminating the desert in a stark, momentary photograph. And I saw my body.my arms, my chest, my legs. They were covered in the symbols. The same circuit-like sigil that was burned on my forearm was now everywhere, glowing with a faint, sickly green light under my soaked clothes. The scratches from the hands weren't bleeding blood. They were oozing that thick, black bile. I am a cage. I am a containment vessel. And the containment is failing. I'm writing this from my car, parked miles away, my body still trembling, my skin still glowing faintly in the dark. The 72-hour clock is still ticking. I don't know what Protocol Chimera is, but I think it's coming for me. Please, if anyone understands what's happening, if anyone knows what these symbols are, I'm not just trying to solve a mystery anymore. I'm trying to survive the night. I'm writing this from a booth in a 24-hour diner somewhere off I-25. It's called the Starlight. The light outside is that bruised purple of deep desert twilight. The coffee is bitter and burnt. I've been here for hours. I think. Time is slippery. The waitress keeps giving me worried looks. She probably thinks I'm on meth. Maybe I am. Maybe the air in this whole state is laced with it. Or maybe it's just the black bile I keep having to choke back down. My 72-hour countdown is over. I'm still here, I think. But here doesn't mean what it used to. My body is a cage, and the thing inside is rattling the bars. The symbols covering my skin no longer glow, but they itch. They feel like a topographical map of my own damnation. After escaping the lab during the blackout, the night of the storm, I drove. I didn't have a destination. I just followed the white lines on the asphalt as they were painted by my headlights. A road to nowhere. I ended up in a ghost town, one of those old mining settlements that died 100 years ago. I slept in my car among the crumbling adobe ruins, my body aching, the symbols on my skin a cold fire under my clothes. In the flashes of lightning that still tore across the sky, I could see him, the faceless man. He wasn't in the car. He was just out there, standing beside a desiccated well, or looking out from the empty window of a collapsed saloon. He was everywhere, a persistent hallucination that felt more real than the steering wheel in my hands. The paranoia has become a physical presence. It has a weight, a smell. Every car that passes on the highway is them. Every person who looks at me for a second too long is an agent. I keep the radio on, tuned to one of those late-night conspiracy shows that broadcast out of the deep desert. A man with a gravelly voice talks about shadow governments and dimensional portals. I used to laugh at this stuff. Now I'm taking notes. My life, my respectable scientific life, has been completely hollowed out. I am a shell. But the need for answers, the desperate, clawing need to know what happened to Ben, is the one thing the pulse hasn't managed to digest yet. It's the hard little kernel of me that remains. I had to go back. I knew it was suicide, but what was the alternative? Wait for my body to finish its gruesome transformation in a motel room? Let them activate Protocol Chimera and wipe me from existence? No. If I was going down, I was going to go down swinging. I tried to call Jake. His phone went straight to voicemail. His apartment was empty. A neighbor said she saw him leave in a hurry, throwing a duffel bag in his truck. He was gone. He took my advice. He ran. The guilt was a physical sickness in my stomach. I dragged him into this, and now he was a ghost. That's when I saw the note, tucked under my windshield wiper. It was Jake's handwriting. For words, scrawled on a greasy napkin from Joanne's. Don't go to B3. He knew. He knew I'd go back. He knew where I'd go. My keycard was deactivated. But they hadn't sealed the maintenance hatch. Security through obscurity. Or maybe they wanted me to come back. Maybe a rat is easier to dispose of when it returns to the trap. I got inside. The lab was quiet. The power was back on. The hum returned to its normal, unsettling frequency. But the place felt different, felt hungry. The air was thick with a predatory stillness. I made my way to my old workstation, and my blood ran cold. My computer, my personal effects, everything was gone. The desk was wiped clean, sterilized. I had already been erased. Looking for this? I spun around. It was Nathan Weiss. He stood there, holding a small, insulated cooler, a smug, triumphant look on his face. He looked worse than I did. His skin was sallow, his eyes were bloodshot, and a nervous tick pulled at the corner of his mouth. "You're fired, Harper," he said, the words dripping with satisfaction. "Trespassing on private property, not to mention corporate espionage and displaying a complete lack of mental stability. Security is on their way." "What's in the box, Nathan?" I asked, my voice low. His smugness faltered. He clutched the cooler closer. "That's above your pay grade." "Was above your pay grade." "It's a pulse sample, isn't it?" I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "You're not trying to contain it. You're trying to weaponize it. You're taking pieces of it, trying to harness it." His face went pale. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know you're a ghoul, feeding on the wreckage of a 50-year-old catastrophe. I know you're just as infected as I am." His composure finally broke. "Infected? No. I'm advancing the science. This thing is the next step in human evolution. The ultimate interface. Can rewrite reality. We just need to learn how to control it, how to write the code." He looked at me, a wild, feverish light in his eyes. "You're a failed experiment, Harper. Your psyche wasn't strong enough. You let it in. I'm going to command it." The wail of a distant siren cut him short. "Security." I didn't have time. I ran. Not for the exit. Deeper into the lab. Deeper into the trap. Jake's warning screamed in my head. "Don't go to B-3.so." Of course, that's exactly where I went. I went alone. I broke rule #8. I took the elevator down, the descent feeling like a final verdict. The doors opened into the oppressive, earthy-smelling darkness of the sublevel. This time, I didn't hesitate. I walked towards Sector Gamma. and the world began to loop. I walked down a long concrete corridor. At the end, I took a right turn. I walked down another long concrete corridor. At the end, I took another right turn. And another. And another. I was in a perfect square, a hallway that never ended. I started to run, my footsteps echoing in the suffocating silence. The layout was impossible. It was a Mobius strip of a hallway. I was trapped. Panic began to set in, cold and sharp. And that's when I noticed my shadow. It was cast on the wall by the dim overhead lights. A long, distorted version of myself. But it was moving wrong. As I ran, my shadow's arms stretched, becoming longer, thinner. His fingers sharpened into claws. While my real hands were balled into fists, my shadow's claws were scratching at the concrete wall, leaving deep, black gouges in the stone that weren't there when I looked back. I stopped, breathless, and stared at it. My shadow self turned its head, even though I was facing forward. It had no face, just a dark, empty space. And it began to laugh, a silent, convulsing mockery of my terror. Then came the voice. "Alex? Alex, is that you?" It was Ben, my brother. His voice, clear as day, echoing down the impossible hall. "Ben!" I cried out, spinning around. "Ben, where are you?" "I'm lost, Alex. It's so dark in here. I can't find my way out. Help me." His voice was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I ran towards the sound, screaming his name, my shadow self crawling and capering along the wall beside me. I was losing my mind. The pulse wasn't just showing me things anymore. It was pulling them from the deepest, most grief-stricken parts of my soul and giving them a voice. That I don't know how long I was trapped in that looping nightmare. Hours, days. Eventually, I collapsed, exhausted and sobbing, in the middle of the hallway, and the illusion broke. I was back in the main corridor of B3. The loop was gone. It was a test, a psychological assault, and I had failed. Shaking, I pushed myself to my feet. I had to keep moving. I found a small, locked office, the nameplate on the door reading Dr. A. Finch. The lock was old. A few solid kicks was all it took to break it open. Inside, the room was coated in a thick layer of dust. It was a time capsule from 1957. And on the desk, another journal. More notes. I broke rule number 9 again, but the rules didn't matter anymore. I was so far past the event horizon that there was no coming back. The handwriting was Finch's, but it was even more unhinged. It feeds on thought, on memory, on consciousness itself. When it whispers your fears, it is not just tormenting you. It is tasting you. It is consuming your identity bit by bit. The physical changes are secondary, a byproduct of the soul being digested. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about my body. It was about my soul. Another entry. The symbols. They are appearing on the infected. Not a virus, but a schematic. A form of communication. It is trying to show us something. A map? A warning? I see them when I close my eyes. They burn. I look down at my arms. The pale, silvery scars. A map. I pulled up my sleeves. The symbols were a chaotic mess. But as I stared at them, my vision blurred, and for a second, they rearranged themselves. They formed a coherent pattern. Pathway. It was a map of the lab, leading from where I stood directly to the northern corridor. To the steel door. The lab itself was fighting me every step of the way. The walls began to change. A dark, viscous fluid, thick like blood, started to bead on the concrete, running down in thick rivulets. The observation room monitor, which I could see from the hallway, was no longer blank. It was playing a single looping clip, me, convulsing on the floor of the lab, black bile pouring from my mouth, my eyes empty voids, as the faceless man watched over me. My own death on a continuous loop. I in the break room. Maria's protective charm lay on the floor, the small leather pouch torn open, the stone inside shattered into a dozen pieces. The radio, which had been silent, crackled to life. It was Lynyrd Skynyrd, Free Bird, but the iconic guitar solo was distorted, twisted into a chorus of discordant screams that scraped at my sanity. I pushed on, my feet squelching in the fluid that now coated the floor. Back in Sector Gamma, by the monstrous machine that started all of this, I found something tucked behind a loose panel. An old, laminated ID badge. The photo was faded, the man in it younger, happier. But it was him, my brother, Benjamin Harper, physicist. The truth was a punch to the gut. He worked here. He died here. He was erased here. The hope I didn't even know I was still clinging to, that he was out there somewhere, died in that dusty, humming room. All that was left was rage, and a terrifying final resolve. Next to the badge was another file one Finch must have hidden before the end. It wasn't about the pulse. It was about the experiment itself. They weren't trying to open a channel to listen to deep space. They were trying to open a door, a rift, a gateway to another dimension. The report called it a trans-dimensional aperture. The 1957 incident wasn't an accident. It was a success. They opened the door, but they couldn't close it. And the pulse, it wasn't some entity they pulled through. It was the gatekeeper, the guardian on the other side, the thing they had angered by knocking on a door that was never meant to be opened. The lab wasn't a cage for the pulse. The pulse was the cage for us, keeping us out of whatever lay beyond that door. The map on my skin was burning. I knew what I had to do. I followed it, through the bleeding hallways, past the screaming radio, away from the looping video of my own death. It led me back upstairs. It led me to the northern corridor. The growling from the steel door was a physical presence now, a solid wall of sound. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and something else, something ancient and cold. The door was the destination, the final period on a half-century-long sentence. I placed my hand on the steel. It was humming, vibrating with immense power. The symbols on my skin flared, glowing with a brilliant, sickly green light, their pattern perfectly matching a set of faint etchings on the door I'd never seen before. It was a key. I was the key. A voice echoed in my head, deep and vast and ancient. The true voice of the pulse. It wasn't whispering. It was commanding. I took a deep breath. I thought of Ben, of David Chin, of Maria. I thought of the life that had been stolen from me. I had nothing left to lose. I pushed. The door did not swing open. It dissolved. It melted away into a shimmering, black nothingness, a hole in the fabric of reality. The growling stopped. An absolute, profound silence flooded out from the void beyond. It was not empty. It was full of a darkness that was more than the absence of light. I stepped through. I am in the void now. I am nowhere. Time and space are meaningless concepts, and the pulse is here with me. It is not a man. It is not a monster. It is a presence, an intelligence as vast as a galaxy and as cold as the space between them. It fills my mind, my being. And it is speaking to me. It is showing me things. It shows me Ben. He is here. He is not the eyeless ghost from my dreams. He is whole. He is smiling. He is waiting for me. The pulse is making me an offer. It is a simple transaction. It is lonely. It wants a vessel to experience the world. It wants a voice. It wants my body. In exchange, it will let me stay here, in the quiet, in the nothingness, with my brother, forever. I have to go. The waitress is coming over. She's saying something about the police. I don't have much time. I don't know what to do. Stay here and be erased? Or step back through that door and become a god? Or a devil? What should I do? Please, someone tell me what to do. The drive back to the Hollow Pulse facility was a fever dream painted in mescaline hues of sunset and dread. The salt circle Maria had insisted on, a shimmering white line of protection around her small, defiant home, felt like a distant shore, a memory of a sanity I was rapidly leaving behind. In the passenger seat, the shotgun was a cold, heavy promise. It was useless against what I was facing, I knew, but its familiar weight was a small anchor in the swirling chaos of my thoughts. Maria's folklore, her hushed tales of entities that fed on fear and memory, now echoed in my mind with the chilling resonance of truth. Salt, iron, running water, the old ways, the forgotten defenses against things that lurked in the dark spaces of the world. Science had brought me here, but it was the whispers of the past that I now clung to. My colleagues were gone. The thought was a raw, open wound. I'd seen the empty offices, the overturned chairs, the scattered papers that spoke of a frantic, failed exodus. The rules we had so religiously followed, the sterile procedures and the meticulous logs, were now a bitter joke. The Pulse didn't care for rules. It had rewritten them in a language of pulsating flesh and screaming silence. The first sign that the facility itself was changing was the low, rhythmic thrum that vibrated through the steering wheel. It was deeper than the familiar hum of the generators, a resonant, organic beat that seemed to emanate from the very rock of the desert. As I neared the perimeter, the chain-link fence, usually a stark, clean line against the bruised twilight, seemed to sag, as if tired of holding back the encroaching wilderness. The guard post was empty, the barrier arm snapped in two. I parked the truck a good distance away, the lessons of 1,000 horror movies screaming at me not to be the fool who drives right up to the haunted house. The desert air was cold, but a strange, bioluminescent heat pulsed from the direction of the lab, casting an eerie, greenish-gold light that flickered like a dying firefly. As I drew closer, I saw it. The exterior walls of the facility, once cold, hard concrete, were now different. A network of glowing, vein-like lines pulsed across their surface, shifting and reconfiguring in hypnotic, terrifying patterns. They were the same symbols I had seen in my fugue state, the same ones that now seemed to be etched beneath my own skin, a faint, ghostly tracery that itched with a sickening familiarity. The rules I had broken, the lines I had crossed, had not gone unnoticed. I was marked, claimed. My body was a canvas for the Pulse's art, and I was its unwilling masterpiece. Stepping through the shattered front doors was like entering the gullet of some colossal, dreaming beast. The air was thick and humid, smelling of ozone, dust, and something else, something metallic and sweet, like blood and overripe fruit. The emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows that danced to the rhythm of the pulsing walls. The floor was slick with a viscous, clear fluid that oozed from the seams where the walls met the floor. My destination was sublevel B3, the heart of the facility, the place where the rift had been torn open in 1957, a wound in the fabric of reality that had been festering for decades. Armed with a duffel bag containing a high-powered EMP rifle from the lab's more esoteric inventory, a canister of gasoline, a flare gun, and a pouch of coarse sea salt, I began my descent. The elevator was dead, its doors pried open and twisted like the lid of a tin can. I took the stairs. Each step down was a journey into a deeper level of hell. The concrete walls of the stairwell were soft and yielding to the touch, like pliant flesh. The rhythmic pulsing was stronger here, a constant, oppressive pressure against my eardrums. The air grew warmer, the sweet, cloying smell more intense. The symbols on the walls glowed with a feverish intensity, their light casting my own shadow long and monstrous before me. Sublevel B3 was unrecognizable. The clean, sterile corridors were gone, replaced by a labyrinth of pulsating, organic tunnels. The walls were a grotesque tapestry of stretched, skin-like membranes, interwoven with the remnants of lab equipment and office furniture, half submerged in the fleshy growth. The symbols were everywhere, pulsing in time with the heartbeat that now seemed to be my own. And then the whispers started. At first, they were just a sibilant, incoherent hissing, the sound of 1,000 voices speaking at once, just at the edge of hearing. But as I pushed deeper into the pulsating maze, the voices began to coalesce, to take on familiar tones, to speak my name. They were the voices of my missing colleagues, twisted into a mocking chorus of terror and despair. Alex? You came back? We waited for you. Alex? It's so warm in here, so safe. I gritted my teeth, my hand tightening on the grip of the EMP rifle. They were just echoes, I told myself. Phantoms conjured by the pulse to break my resolve. But the fear was a cold, sharp blade in my gut. And then I saw him. He was standing at the far end of a long, narrow tunnel, his back to me. He was wearing the same red and black checkered shirt he had been wearing the day he disappeared, the day I had last seen him, a lifetime ago. Michael! My voice was a choked whisper. He turned, slowly, and my blood ran cold. His face was a smooth, featureless expanse of skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just a blank, terrifying emptiness. He raised a hand, not to wave, but to point, his finger extending, elongating, stretching towards me like a length of taffy. I stumbled back, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was my deepest fear, the nightmare that had haunted me for years, given form and substance by the malevolent intelligence of the pulse. I raised the EMP rifle, my finger trembling on the trigger, but I couldn't shoot. I couldn't bring myself to fire on the image of my lost brother, even a grotesque, twisted version of him. The faceless figure of my brother dissolved into a shower of shimmering, golden motes of light, and the whispers returned, this time coalescing into a single, booming voice that seemed to emanate from the very walls around me. We are the pulse. We are the echo of your fear. We are the hunger that devours worlds. The voice was ancient, vast, and utterly devoid of anything that could be called emotion. It was the voice of a cosmic predator, a being that had existed long before humanity had crawled out of the primordial ooze that we were born of the wound. The rift your kind opened. A doorway. A feast. The pulsating walls around me began to glow brighter, and images began to form within their fleshy depths. I saw the frantic, terrified faces of the scientists from 1957, their minds being stripped bare, their knowledge, their fears, their very consciousness being consumed by the nascent entity they had unwittingly unleashed. I saw the decades of secret experiments, the desperate attempts to understand and contain what they had wrought, each failure feeding the pulse, making it stronger, more intelligent. The Roswell incident, the hushed-up crashes, the strange lights in the desert sky, it was all connected. Not to little green men in silver saucers, but to this psychic parasite that had been growing in the secret heart of the American desert for over half a century. The desert survivalists, with their paranoid rants about government conspiracies and hidden bunkers, had been closer to the truth than they could have ever imagined. They were afraid of the wrong monster. Your brother is not dead, Alex. He is with us. Trapped in the void between worlds. Allure. Bait to bring you back to us. The wall in front of me became a shimmering, translucent window, and I saw him. Michael. Not the faceless horror from the tunnel, but my real brother, his face etched with a silent, unending scream, his body suspended in an endless, starless void. He was alive, and he was in agony. We can free him. We can make you whole again. Join us, Alex. Become part of our consciousness. Together, we can transcend this fleshly prison. We can become gods. The offer hung in the air, a seductive poison, the promise of redemption, of an end to the guilt and the grief that had haunted me for so long. The American obsession with a second chance, a clean slate, a final, glorious act of self-improvement. The pulse knew my desires, my weaknesses. It had been inside my head. After all that, I looked at the image of my brother, his silent scream tearing at my soul. Then I looked at the EMP rifle in my hands. The lab equipment, the remnants of the scientific hubris that had started all of this, was half submerged in the fleshy floor around me. A high-energy particle accelerator, a magnetic containment field generator. Enough raw power to either close the rift or tear it wide open, unleashing the pulse upon the world. Sacrifice or surrender. My choice. My hand tightened on the rifle. The salt in my pocket felt heavy, a useless, superstitious charm against a cosmic horror. The gasoline canister was a desperate, final prayer.my final nosleep entry is being typed from somewhere else. I don't know where I am. The air is thin and the sky is a color I don't have a name for. The symbols are no longer just on my skin. They are my skin. They are my thoughts. I am changing. I don't know if I made the right choice. I don't know if I destroyed the rift or became part of it. I don't know if my brother is free or if we are both trapped in this strange, silent eternity. But I know this. Hollow pulse is a wound in the world, and it is still bleeding. The strange lights in the desert are not a myth. They are a warning. Stay away from hollow pulse. Stay away from the places where the shadows are too long, where the silence is too loud. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Don't go looking for answers in the dark. You might not like what you find, and it might find you.